And greetings. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace with Todd Erzin and an ailing, down for the count, Aaron McIntyre. But he's here grinding so that you can have an original show today because we can't do one without him. So you may not see or hear much of Aaron, including his beloved opening montage, while we give him it's one of those days in Major League Baseball where a guy takes a day off but still comes to work. And I always used to wonder, if you're sitting there, you might as well swing the bat 4 times at least, right? And see if you can get a hit, okay? The only place in America where you have a day off, but you still show up for work. Well, we're giving Aaron a sick day today, but he's still here working because we can't work without him. All right, so you're going to get more of us and less of him today as we are brought to you by our friends over at Jace Medical. We have spoken a lot about Jace over the years since they joined us here on the tail end of the scamdemic, and they came to us because they saw the work we were doing to debunk it and were greatly concerned as well with what the powers that be were doing to debunk venerable medications like hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, one that it just in the last few years given a Nobel Prize to. And they started thinking, if they're going to do that to these kinds of recent award-winning drugs, what might they do to venerable drugs when we need them as well and need them the most? Like for example, the penicillin family of medications, doxycycline for those of us that happen to be allergic to penicillin and more. That's where the original Jace case came into play to make sure that you've got the peace of mind that the next time, that could never happen here. It happens here. It doesn't happen to you, though, because you're ready. They've expanded their repertoire of preparedness, too. All right. From first aid and other preparedness kits, you can now expand your Jace case into an increasing menu of medications that you want to get backups of, including that aforementioned ivermectin. And there's more exciting things coming soon as well. That's why right now you want to enter the promo code DACE at checkout for a discount on your order. That's promo code DEACE at JASE for a discount on your order. Promo code DACE at jace.com, JASE, jace.com. And again, don't forget to join the mission. Christmas shopping season is just about here, regardless of what Todd Erzin has to say. All right, so if you want to join us, you want to give that fine patriot in your life the gift that keeps on giving all the year long, Clark. Get him a subscription here to Blaze TV, $20 off with my promo code DACE at DEACE at blazetv.com/DACE, promo code DACE at blazetv.com/DACE, and that way you won't miss any of the exclusive content that we produce here each and every day for our subscribers here at Blaze TV. All right. Coming up on today's show, we're going to get into the government shutdown, who's winning, who's losing, how much longer might this go on. We're heading into the Thanksgiving travel season. Could there be delays there? November 1 is a key date for government employees expecting a paycheck. Could there be some political pressure points there? Why does still really nobody, unless they're directly impacted by this, seem to even care? It's not even a top 5 issue right now in terms of resonance with the American people. We'll get into that and more with our good friend Bob Vander Plaats coming up at the bottom of the hour. Then next hour, it's going to be your turn to ask me anything. We took questions this week from our followers over on X. Todd has seen said questions. I have not. And he has decided which questions that I will be answering on the program during the next hour of the show. But today, with Aaron down sick today, so no montage as we try to preserve his voice for the long haul. There are 3 things I would like us to address. And the theme of this opening monologue here today is one of the creeds of this show. I'm going to prove to you for the 10,000th time, reason number 4,214, that worldview is destiny. Worldview is destiny. Dread it. Run from it. But your worldview as destiny arrives just the same. As a man thinketh, so is he. Out of the heart, the mouth speaks. What you think about all day long and the way you think about it is what you will become. What a society thinks about all day long and the way they think about it, they will eventually become. You cannot, we will not be able to outrun our worldview. Worldview is destiny. Here's the first thing that I want to show you to that end. All right, now check this out. This is absolutely amazing. And I saw this morning and I thought, I need verification of this before we talk about it on the air. So I went to Grok, the AI, But first, here's the data. 1 out of 8 American households is receiving food stamps, the SNAP program. 1 out of 8. 1 out of 8 American households is. Now, who are these households that are receiving it? Take a look at this. Percentage of U.S. households receiving SNAP benefits. 45% of Afghani migrants are. 42% of Somali migrants are. 35% of Iraqi migrants are. 34% Dominican, 28% of Caribbean, 28% Native American, 27% Puerto Rican, 25% Cuban, 25% Black, 24% Arab, 24% Cambodian, 23% Haiti. So I said to Grok, is this data true? Is this data true? And when I asked Grok that question, Grok verified that this data is true. And the reason why I wanted it verified is because what's documented here by this graphic is a national suicide. Let me just boil down what these numbers mean. We purposefully imported a bunch of people from countries we don't share any fundamental values with. So they would come here and get on the government dole and just vote for the government dole political party, Democrats, to destroy us. Now, whether you want to say, because when you see this data, you're left with one of two options. No previous generation of Americans would have tolerated anything like this, regardless of how they voted. I defy you to jump in the DeLorean 100 years ago, almost, and go find yourself an FDR New Deal voter and tell them we're going to do the New Deal, the Tennessee Valley Authority and all that stuff, Social Security, and we're going to do it for Afghanistan, Somalia, and Iraq. Go tell them we're going to do that. Absolutely no previous era of Americans, regardless of how they voted, would have tolerated this. None. Absolutely none. And so you're left with one of two options here. And they both are a direct result of worldview being destiny. Either A, people just naively did this as an extension of their own worldview, believing that it's the United States' job to be the world's welfare state. And they did not intend, therefore, for all of the other various social costs that would go along with data like this to be imported into the country. In other words, their worldview is so foolish, and the fool says in his heart, there is no God. Their worldview is so foolish and so naive about human nature that they knowingly injected cancer into their own culture to prove that their worldview was true, and they didn't even realize that's what they were doing. That's a possibility, right, Todd?
Mm-hmm.
The other possibility is that this is a malignant, purposeful, literal treason. And the societal costs that go along with importing this and becoming the world's welfare system was intentional to Cloward pivot America, essentially. The Columbia University professors Barack Obama took their classes. Columbia University professors and married, and they had a theory that Americans would never knowingly vote for what New York City is about to vote for unless you overrode the system with so much rot gut, corruption, et cetera, that then people would feel like there is no alternative. We couldn't possibly dig out of this on our own if we wanted to. And so the only entity that's here to save us that could possibly accomplish said feat would be government. And therefore, what we've endured the last few years was a managed decay. This was all done on purpose. And all of your most insidious theorems, from replacement theory to everything else, were all true. Those are your options. In either case, though, worldview is destiny. We got here because somebody's worldview, or enough people's, a critical mass of people's worldview said that the world does not operate the way God's word said. There are not spheres of authority. As we enter into Reformation Week, this was a key teaching coming out of the Reformation. There are not spheres of authority within the kingdom of God. Heck, there might not even be a God. Or if there is, we could be the people we've been waiting for all along. And so we'll operate like our own gods, because our true Father coined the phrase, ye be like God. And so they're just such utter fools by rejecting the first facts of the universe. And therefore, they have made themselves retarded, insane. I saw Ocasio-Cortez say yesterday at the Mamdani rally, we're not the crazy ones, we're the sane ones. And that's always what people who shake their fist at God think they are. And the rest of us now are just poised to suffer because of this collective foolishness and naivete. That is an option. And the other option is everybody knew all along what they were doing. And this was just all done on purpose. But the end result is the same. And the cause is ultimately the same too, a worldview. In both cases, the worldview is godless. It's barbaric. It's savage. And as John Calvin once infamously said, when God wants to punish a rebellious people, he gives them wicked rulers. Worldview is destiny item number 2 I want to show you now. Take a look at this. This is from Mike Gee. Looks like he lives in New York. Talking about Mamdani. And I have been pointing out that Mamdani is not an insurrection. He's a fulfillment. This is the only way this could ultimately end, minus mass spiritual revival. And Mike points out, hey, guys like Bloomberg and de Blasio enabled all of this. And he's right. But what needs to be explained is why. And that's the explanation that I offered. Why did they enable this? Because worldview is destiny. Mike Bloomberg is the most insipid of corporatist Republicans you could possibly imagine. His God is mammon. There is no other higher ethical standard or authority. Bill de Blasio was a literal, again, not a euphemism, not a rhetorical flourish, not, being absurd to illustrate absurdity. He literally was a Sandinista communist in the 80s. He literally was. He literally worked out of the Sandinista offices or had a connection to the Sandinista offices in New York City. I can't remember exactly what it was. But he was a literal Sandinista. And so when the predecessors of Mamdani are a literal Sandinista and an insipid, soulless corporatist, so we have two absolutely godless worldviews and ideologies preceded Mamdani. Well, we haven't done the 7 deadly worldviews in a while. Makes me think maybe we need to re-up this maybe in 2026.
People liked it, yeah.
But one of the things you learn in my course, the 7 deadly worldviews, is, and the final deadly worldview is secularism. And one of the things you learn is that there's no such thing. It doesn't exist. Someone will always rule. Something will always be worshipped. And so whenever a culture devolves to the point of secularism, it is in order to till the soil so that it will now welcome what the new theism will be. Because every culture is governed by a theism, every single one. We've had one truly atheist state in really all of advanced human history, the Soviet Union, but they were a theocracy too. They just made themselves gods. They just said the state was God. Because someone will always rule and something must always be worshipped. Those are iron laws of the creation. Because we are a creation. So something will rule. God is or he isn't. Something will be worshipped. God is or he isn't. And so now, post 9/11, post Rudy, the city just chose soulless mammon in Bloomberg. And then the appetizer from Mamdani is de Blasio. This is the only natural step it could take. It's the most logical. Honestly, this is some of the math that makes the most sense in our culture today. And we're acting like this just kind of came out of nowhere. No, we're not. I mean, this is crazy. He is inevitable. He's a reckoning. He's a fulfillment. This harvest has been long planted in the making. So we have godless Republican corporatism, godless far-left statism. They both get tried. They both fail the primary needs of the people. So guess where the people will go? Step one, reject the one true God. And that is step one here. We're talking about a city that not even a generation ago saw the God they're about to embrace blow up two of their most powerful iconographies. And they're now about to go, similar to the ancient Israelites who conquered the people of Canaan and their false gods, and then after doing so turned right back to those very false gods and said, we will now, in place of the Hittites and the Amorites and the Jebusites, we will now go down into the valley of Ben Hinnom and we will cast our babies into the fire to Molech instead of them now. There's nothing new under the sun. Just new people under the sun who haven't seen or heard it yet. The devil just has a greatest hits album and just re-racks it for a new generation of people. We're finite. He's not. He gets to wait us out. That generation's died off. A new one hasn't heard my BS yet. They'll fall for it. He's proven right most of the time. Being proven right in New York City right now. So corporations are God. That was Michael Bloomberg's godlessness. The state is God. That was Bill de Blasio's godlessness. Both failed the people of New York. And so now they will turn to a new God, a false God. This pattern plays itself out all the time. Because as a species, we're played out for all of time outside of Christ. Christ or chaos, those are your options. King Jesus or whatever kings of this planet and world that the true ruler of this fallen world prefers. Those are your options. Which brings me to number 3 of what I sent over to you guys this morning. How do you win? Well, in the meta, there's no way to win minus mass spiritual revival. We lack, and you can just see this. You see this in the legacy of Charlie Kirk. Charlie was a young Christian, was a political activist who happened to be a young Christian man. And then the more he got involved and connected and successful in politics, the more he realized, I'm going to have to be way more of a Christian man and then who happens to be an activist. Because he recognized the limits of what we can do on our own in our current cultural sinful states. That ceiling is low. We're limited in how far and how much we can do on our own. And as the years went on, so literally as he was assassinated doing an evangelism campaign, you saw Charlie become much more fixated and focused on biblical worldview and evangelism and less on politics, while still being very involved politically. So we cannot win. We cannot win without mass spiritual revival. We're too outflanked now. We've got more sand in the hourglass than Western Europe does, but it's running out. It'll run out on over here, this side of the Atlantic too, minus awakening. It will. But there are things we can do if we understand that, and if we understand the signs of the times. Because ultimately, revival is not up to us. We don't make the final call on that. Revival comes from above. So there are things that we could do if we rightly divided the signs of the times and knew what to do about them, as it says about David's friends and allies, the sons of Issachar, men who understood the times and what to do about them. Those of us who know the signs of the times, there are things we could do to buy us more time. We see some early seeds of revival, at least, in some of you saw this in Charlie's memorial and in some of what's happening with our young men. You see some of it. And so what can we do to spread this out now? Give ourselves more time to see if something supernatural is about to awaken in our country. What can we do in the natural? And keep in mind, though, we're not a nation of laws and we never have been. We're a nation of political will and we always will be. So that means all these things will be hard. And that means all the things that we can do to hold this off will be difficult. You'll be condemned for it. You'll be criticized for it. None of the enemies that want this country destroyed are going to say, wow, you got me on that one. Live to fight another day. That's never happening. So, let me give you an example of what we could do here. This is the director of the FDA, Marty Makary, saying, quote, "We're doing the biggest crackdown in a generation on pharma television ads." Quote, "I sent about 108 cease and desist letters and another 1,500 letters warning the industry." Now, is that more than we have gotten from any Republican that could win a national election on such a thing in our lifetimes?
Of course.
Of course it is. Let's recognize that. Is that going to buy us any time at all whatsoever? Probably not. You know why? Because we with the Republicans we elected for the previous 40 years, we're like on these kinds of topics. So we're out of time. We're out of time for cease and desist letters. So I asked Grok, how much, that's Elon Musk's AI, how much would it hurt corporate media, corporate entertainment, television, if we just banned big pharma ads altogether? Because big pharma, by the way, we're like one of only 2 countries in the world that permit this advertising. Grok came back with the data. By far, big pharma is the largest advertiser for corporate network media. Up to 15% of their annual advertising, which doesn't sound like a huge number, but it's by far number one. Everybody else is in the 8, 9, 10 single digit percentage. So what are the things that we could do if, again, with our own worldview as destiny? I gave you 2 examples of how terrible worldviews are destiny. Our worldview is destiny as well. We can claim to believe all that we want. If it doesn't follow any action, it's irrelevant. It's a blog. So we can all sit here and agree and nod heads based on the first 15 minutes of this monologue, but then we're at an action step, and that's why I put these things in this order. In light of the first 2 things I just said, anybody within the sound of my voice that's a non-communist, would they disagree with what I just said fundamentally? You might disagree with maybe what I think the solution is or how extensive I think it is, but fundamentally, any non-communist within the sound of my voice, would they disagree with the first 2 worldview items that we just charted and confirmed?
No.
No. Well, then the question becomes, what are we going to do? There are things we could do with powers we do have. Like, for example, we're just banning all the pharma advertising. You get enough of that when you go see your primary care physician anyway. Most of them are just proxies and spokespeople for big pharma anyway. So you can just go and get it one-on-one and we actually have a conversation with a live human. We don't need it on TV. And then number 2, we're not going to allow them to subsidize the people trying to destroy the country. And this takes us back to chart 1. We're not going to allow them to subsidize all the people that just imported the entire welfare state of the world from the third world into our own country to commit suicide. We're not going to let them subsidize that. We're actually going to cut our enemy's mother's milk off. We're going to cut it off. We're going to stop letting it be funded. None of this is easy, but what I'm suggesting here on the advertising is way easier than standing up to a federal court or defying a Supreme Court order. Way easier than that. Way easier than destroying the teachers' unions. Way easier than that. So might I submit to you, and those are things that all need to be done, by the way, but might I submit to you, if we cannot do this, we're never doing the other things. And if we're never doing the other things, then we go right back to the first two items I showed you, and that sand now starts pouring through that hourglass at a quicker pace until it runs out. And then I hope you know Arabic or Chinese. Or you can merge and become transhumanist with the AI. Those are your options. There aren't any other options. Because the people driving all of the alternatives I just mentioned aren't going to give you any. Resistance is futile. Todd, your thoughts?
Well, a sign that Big Pharma and the worldview that pushes it to do what it is currently doing believes that what Steve just called us towards, we don't have the guts, integrity, passion to pull off. They're starting to publish studies again. They're just totally gaslighting us, saying that, oh, by the way, that mRNA vaccine, it's actually curing cancer right now.
Yeah, causes and curing is an easy typo.
They're doing that to you and it's why. It's because of it's spiritual. It's not healthcare dominated. Actually, Steve made a great point, even greater than I think he realizes, in that the fact that the doctors are still going to push all these drugs on you mean that the ads aren't primarily medical at all. They're all about funding the worldview.
Correct. That's all that it is.
And they don't believe
it's a sugar daddy. It's a mother's milk. That's why I use that term. Yes.
And they don't believe you have any intention of getting uncomfortable enough to do this thing Steve is talking about.
At some point, we have to move beyond theoretical. And I mean, again, I go back to Charlie again. That was ultimately his greatest contribution, is that he did that. He went into the dens of iniquity. He rolled up his sleeves. He got his hands dirty. He did soul-to-soul combat with the spirit of the age, which is why I took him out, because he was just stacking dubs. But this is what we are now going to have to do. And by we, I mean there is something everyone within the sound of my voice can do. We are not responsible. That will be by the grace of God that we have revival and awakening. And if he doesn't give it to us, that's also the justice of God. So he's right whether he gives it to us or not. Do we deserve a revival? Do we deserve that as a people?
No.
No, we don't. We are in danger in mortal danger of wasting the greatest single blessing any nation on this earth has received, since God told Moses to go to Pharaoh and say, "Let my people go." No, we don't deserve revival at all. We don't. And God is good all the time. All the time, God is good. So if this is it, and there will be no revival, is God's justice justified? And do we praise God and say, "Blessed be the name of the Lord, he who taketh and giveth away"? Yes. But do we know that? Do we know that?
No.
We don't. What we also know is that mercy triumphs over justice. And the cross is the final word on that. We know that too. We know that God does not enjoy giving us what we deserve, but would much prefer to give us what we don't, the mercy and grace that we do not deserve. So my master plan is that we start doing the things that demonstrate we prefer grace to justice by doing the justice that is deserved. No longer tolerating the injustice that is not, and being afraid of it and being scared of it. And so we're going to start doing things like we're going to stop funding the people that brought this rot gut into our culture. And then we're going to grow from there. Or we're over. Those are the choices. Hey, you can buy gold right now and get free silver. That's right. For every $5,000 purchased from Birch Gold Group this month in advance of Veterans Day, they're going to send you a free patriotic silver round that commemorates the Gadsden and American flags. You know, gold is up over 40% from the beginning of the year, and Birch Gold can help you own it by converting an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. Plus, they'll send you that free silver honoring our veterans on qualifying purchases. And if you're a current or former military, Birch Gold has a special offer just for you. They're waiving custodial fees for the first year on investments of any amount. With an A-plus rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, many of which in this audience, I encourage you to diversify your savings into gold by texting my name, Steve, to the number 989898 for a free info kit and claim your eligibility for free silver with a qualifying purchase before the end of the month. Again, text my name, Steve, to 989898. Text Steve to 989898. Do that today. Speaking of today, we're going to do this now. Our good friend Bob Vander Plaats is here with us. Good to see you, brother. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Good football. I mean, if you like the Iowa Hawkeyes, and I know all your audience does, but go Hawks. They're playing really well right now.
It's the most Iowa thing ever to finally figure out how to build an offense around a running quarterback, and it's a white guy from South Dakota, right? Okay. That is the most Iowa Hawkeye thing of all time. But right now, they are playing very well.
And you know what? They are 2 close defeats away from being ranked in the top 3 in the country. And, I mean, Indiana's ranked number 2.
Yep.
And they should have beat Indiana.
Yep.
And Iowa State, when I feel bad for Cyclones, I like Cyclones as well.
Are you here to announce you're running for governor?
No.
All right, because the reason we had to start a national show off by...
I love the Hawkeyes.
Yeah, we had to completely placate and pander to Hawkeye and Cyclone fans on a national show.
Yeah, and the Panthers and the Bulldogs, they're pretty good too.
Indeed. So yes, all right. Let's get to issues the rest of the country cares about.
I'd love to.
All right, the government shutdown, who cares? Does it seem like anybody really cares about this right now?
Well, from a guy who travels a lot, and that's why I just find it kind of ironic. Kristi Noem is on a public service commercial basically saying the government shutdown, call your Democrats, tell them to get off the ball. We need to get air traffic control and these things run the way they should. And then you get pushed off from the gate and you're on the tarmac, and the first thing you're going to hear if you're flying through Denver or Dallas or Houston or Chicago, all the major hubs, you're going to say, listen, we've been grounded for 45 minutes on the tarmac. And the reason is because air traffic control can no longer handle this, and it's all due to the government shutdown. And so when I'm looking at this government shutdown thing, and you're seeing how people are trying to play this, I'm trying to think who wins. Because in 2026, it's all about who controls the midterms. And so right now, if you're Trump, if you're Speaker Johnson, if you're Majority Leader Thune, you've got to believe the government shutdown is aiding and assisting your efforts for the midterms with the Republicans. And yet, if you're the Democrats, you've got Jeffries and Schumer, whoever they've got up there lately, they got to be thinking this benefits the Democrats. And my big question is that who does it really benefit in 2026? And it depends what issues are going to be top of mind. But I believe Trump, I like his impulse of saying, they elected a new sheriff in town. We're giving him a new sheriff in town. We're not going to keep funding all this garbage that I said we're not going to keep funding. And so I'm gonna lock her down. And I think Jeffries and Schumer, maybe they're playing to the far left of their base, saying, if you want socialized medicine, if you want to kill babies on demand, if you want to do all that, we're going to shut it down for that as well. And I'm just finding it ironic. See, this is the longest shutdown I've been a part of, I believe, in my lifetime.
Well, you and I would have come to age. You're about 10 years older than me, if I remember right. Yeah, okay.
Almost exactly.
All right, so, but you and I would have been coming of age politically about the time of the 95 government shutdown.
Sure.
And this was Republicans off of the contract with America. And there was the famous episode. It's funny. I never have gotten a chance to ask Newt if this really happened. I need to do that the next time I talk to him. But the urban legend is from the era that Newt, as the House Speaker, and Bob Dole, as the Senate Majority Leader, were negotiating with Bill Clinton on Air Force One. And Bill Clinton is according to urban legend, reported to have said to both Bob and Newt, I need you guys to give me something I can take back to my base. I'll give you 80, 90% of what you want. But I have to give, I'm the guy that gave the speech, the era of big government is over in my State of the Union after that midterm. Mm-hmm. But I need something to take back to my left-wing base. Otherwise, I'm going to face a primary in next year's presidential election. And every time presidents face primaries, they lose. Mm-hmm. Okay? And the urban legend is Clinton offered that, and Newt and Dole said, you'll get nothing and like it, and walked off the back of Air Force One and basically cornered Bill Clinton politically into a position where he had to have courage he really didn't have. But because they gave him an offer that he knew was going to cost him politically if he took it, they forced him into a play to fight back and let the shutdown happen. And it happened over Thanksgiving, and it was disastrous. And Republicans got slaughtered in the next election. That's right. And that has been the conventional wisdom of government shutdown fights for the next 30 years, basically the entirety of the Boehner, McConnell, Trent Lott era in Washington, D.C., right?
Yep.
Except the funny thing is, if you look at the 1996 election, that's actually not what happened. Now, don't get me wrong. Bob Dole got slaughtered.
Yeah.
But Republicans actually retained Congress as a party for the first time in 50 years in that midterm election. The American people returned Republicans in control of Congress while slaughtering Bob Dole. So that clearly doesn't demonstrate that shutdown had much to do with anything with that general election the next year. And it was probably more about the fact Dole represented. Do you remember that last debate where he gave out his website? Do you remember that? How awkward that was? All right.
And Bob Dole says, go to Bob Dole's website.
I think it's just pretty clear that we were in the midst of a boomer generational transition. Clinton, he represented that evolution, and Dole represented a different era, and he was just, cooked from the beginning because of that.
And the thing you got to be thinking of, though, right now is that Trump's biggest concern is who has the majority of Congress after the midterms.
Correct. Because his presidency, with the exception of what he'll attempt to do in foreign policy, his presidency is effectively over if we lose these midterms. Between what Democrats will do with Congress, which is they're gonna impeach him on literally everything. They're going to take Hegseth, RFK Jr., take the most disruptive, non-traditional cabinet appointees he has. Mm-hmm. Like, they're not going to go after Pam Bondi, okay?
Right.
So, but Hegseth, and which tells you that's the problem. But Hegseth and RFK Jr. and those guys, they're all getting impeached.
Yep.
They're all facing congressional inquiries, and that's all that's going to happen for 2 years. They will do absolutely nothing. And at that point, you're going to see people in the party also begin jockeying for the future after Trump on top of that as well.
It's going to be chaos. It's going to be a mess. If the Republicans do not hold on to Congress, that's why I believe Trump knows this more than anybody. He knew it day one, almost when he took the oath of office. The midterms are crucial for him. So I've got to believe everything of his pulse, which he's proven to be right a lot, says the shutdown aids and abets me.
Well, we've already seen him break this McConnell, Lott, Boehner protocol, right? We saw this in the Tea Party years. Boehner, always went up to the Obama White House, negotiated against himself because Obama knew that he didn't have the balls to do a shutdown, and so there was no point to it. And Obama won all those fights, right? At the very least, he has blown up that narrative. I got to be honest, because my expectations are pretty low for Republicans as a general rule. They have held out here longer than I thought they would.
Way longer.
I think a smart and what's even more interesting about it is they're not in D.C. I mean, Mike Johnson has put them on recess until Democrats agree to their cuts.
Yep.
Which means they're back home. Which also means if there was there was a bunch of pressure out on the stump from their voters to say, hey, what are we doing here? I'm not going to get this check. I'm not going to get that check.
There'd be pressure on Mike Johnson.
There'd be pressure on Mike Johnson and Trump to say, hey,
back.
Unlike Trump, we don't get term limited out. We can keep this gravy train going. You guys are going to cost us our seat next year. So they're at home hearing almost none of this, except from people that likely aren't going to vote for him no matter what they do anyway. I don't know how this is going to turn out. The Republicans have stood together longer than I ever would have envisioned they did. But at the very least, the politics of this, for whoever takes over after Trump, looking at you, J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, for whoever takes over after Trump, our base has been reprogrammed on this, that we can do this now.
You can stand your ground.
That's right. We don't have to give in every time there's one of these, CR or budget fights, and we can make it a zero-sum game. We can get something out of this. And the future of how the GOP will handle its business moving forward after this, I don't know how this one will turn out. I just know it's going to be different than what we saw the previous 30 years.
But it also shows who has the real power in D.C. Trump has the real power in D.C., without question. And you know that he's the king right now, and what he says in primaries or in elections matter a lot. but also what he says, obviously, in Washington, D.C. matters a lot. But part of that is he's won, and he's won, and he's won, and he's won again. I mean, his deal about we're going to win so much you're going to get tired of winning. I think what Mike Johnson and John Thune see in him, he's a winner. We trust his pulse. Let's do what he says. And you're right, Steve. I think courage begets courage, and Trump's courage has really given courage to Johnson and Thune.
Well, I kind of think you're giving him too much credit. I think Johnson sees his entire political livelihood is tied to Trump, and he wouldn't be where he's at without him. And he won't be speaker one more day than he wants him to be. Yeah. And I think Thune hates and detests Trump in his base, just knows he doesn't have the numbers of critical mass to oppose them. He'll get just absolutely run over. So he's got to go along with something that he clearly does not believe in.
And politicians are also very good at reading the wind. Mm-hmm. And they're reading the wind, and the wind is all in Trump's favor.
So what are the pressure points here? Because November 1st, we're hearing there's going to be a whole different class of people now that are not going to get paid. Maybe an entire layer of TSA agents gone, for example, and we're going to see delays during the holiday travel season, things of that nature, right? So what are potential pressure points here? How long could this go? Because this is Todd, your line from the Hunt for Red October. The hardest part of playing chicken is knowing when to blink.
Correct.
Right. Democrats want this to go on a little bit longer to see if those events cause enough pain that they get the leverage. Right. But if we go through those events and they don't cause the massive pain, and Republicans risk that, they could come out on the other side and a whole generation of voters is like, we can pretty much just live permanently without 35% of the federal government. We're going to be okay.
And by the way, the government
so who's going to blink?
Not affecting me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a really good question. As a matter of fact, again, I go back to air travel. I was talking to a guy who's a pilot today, and a private pilot. And he said, I know enough about air traffic control to be dangerous. He goes, what you don't need, and I'm not so sure the Democrats don't want this, is to have some calamity take place, because you know what? The government shut down. Two is the welfare, the food stamps. That's going to stop. Is that enough to?
Well, since we found out in the last few days, almost all of that has gone to non-native citizens anyway. But maybe that needs to cease and stop.
But you're going to find out where's the pressure point at that. Mm-hmm. I mean, all of a sudden, did that cause?
That might be the pressure point on Democrats.
Yep. Yeah. I also think it is so admirable. I do not know the guy. The guy does not want to be known, but obviously they let his name out to say, listen, I'm supporting Trump. I'm supporting the governor's shutdown. And I'm going to make sure the military gets paid. Here's $130 million. Pay your military. Mm-hmm. To me, that's America being America. So I give a lot of kudos to Tim Mellon for being able to step up and say, I'll pay the military for right now as well. So the pain, Steve, I don't know what that threshold is, but I think the Democrats, that is their hope. Get it far enough to where there's a disaster, there's a calamity, there's neighbors not being fed, whatever it is, where people say it's the government shutdown that's the problem. But it could be having a reverse effect on this one.
So a week from now, are you here next week? Are you here next Monday?
I am here next week.
All right. Is this still going on next Monday?
I believe it is.
Which would be after November the 1st.
I don't see anybody blinking right now.
But November 1st is also a weekend, so that first Monday would kind of be the first day of the post-November 1 reckoning we're heading towards that would actually be felt by people.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is that you have Election Day on Tuesday as well. And a lot of people are going to be paying attention to what's happening in New Jersey, what's happening in Virginia. They're going to take a look at what's the bellwether showing at that point. But I think next week, Monday, we're still in the same position.
What do you think, Todd?
I agree. I mean, it's what Trump wants in this as in all things. But also, the Democrats are clearly the party of chaos right now. They want the pain and suffering to be seen. They did it with the transgender kids. You don't want them to kill themselves. They're going to do the same thing. Look at the starving people. Okay? So then it's incumbent on us. On the right, set Trump aside for a second. Are we going to be the party of Christ? As you said, it's always Christ versus chaos. But on the right, it's often, if we're the party of comfort versus chaos, that's when chaos knows they can beat us, when we just don't want to be bothered. So that's what they're waiting for. Do we really have the resolve, or are we going to shed ourselves from Trump when things get hard?
Yeah. And I think Trump is going to show resolve. Remember, he got a lot of pushback not that long ago on the tariffs when he started doing the tariff stuff. And he stood his ground. He stayed with the tariffs. Nobody's really complaining about the tariffs.
It's the same psychology. Right. You're absolutely right.
I think he's doing the same thing now with the government shutdown.
So could the comfort actually be our friend for once? Meaning that if we get to a point that people just
say, I'm doing well.
And when I say people, I mean the people that would ever consider voting for us. Obviously, most of the people, not all, because you're dealing with a lot of military families that tend to lean right.
Yep.
But most of the people hurt the most by this would never even consider voting for us. You mentioned Virginia, for example. Most of our lifetimes, because we're all, I think you're an old Gen Xer, right? Or at a very young boomer, I can't remember.
Old on this show, yeah.
Okay, but I think, so we're all Gen Xers. So until recently, the political paradigm was Ohio, Virginia, and Florida, determined every election, right?
Yep.
And the Republicans had to win 2 out of those 3, right? Well, Republicans have not really been that competitive in Virginia presidential elections since Obama. And it's because of how much he grew government and how much of those government employees ended up settling there in the state of Virginia and turning that state way more blue than it ever used to be, right? So I don't know that it sends any kind. Winsome Sears was not really looked at as a legit threat until recently in that race. Mm-hmm. And so if she loses, a week from tomorrow, I don't know that it makes a profound statement about the shutdown.
I agree.
But if she were to win, in light of a government shutdown, then I think it speaks volumes, don't you?
Without question. And I'm glad you took a state like Virginia. They are so dependent on the government check. Mm-hmm. If Winsome Sears were to come out, and people they wrote her off a long time ago until her opponent said something really stupid. Winsome Sears is now back in the limelight. Yep. If she wins amidst a government shutdown, that's another way to stay entrenched. Trump to say, I'm not giving in. Trump wants a win. Schumer, you said it right. Schumer, Jeffries, everybody wants to have something go back to their base. I think Trump actually wants to have a win for America. You
do risk, though, if you're Democrats, you do risk people that would ever consider voting Republican get, to use your favorite word, Todd, comfortable with only the government operating at about a 65, 70% clip. Mm-hmm. Right? Now, what we may have to endure to get people to that comfort level is what the Republicans are risking here over the next, say, 30 days or so. All right. Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you guys.
Todd, do you have any quick thoughts on that in the last 30 seconds?
I don't think that's comfort working in our favor. I think if Republicans can do that, that's a genuine sign of revival. That's shifting their priorities.
You mean if they could hold the line for that long?
Yes.
And Republican voters as well?
Yes.
Because that's the first thing is you have to see if Republican voters start to crack or not, right? And so far in all the polling I've seen on our side, they're not. All right, when we come back, it'll be your turn to ask me anything. Stay tuned. All right, we're back with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast, alongside Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre, whom is down today. He's here making sure that we're here, but we're letting him rest up as much as possible. The flu ravaging his house over the weekend. I'm Steve Deace. You can let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox by emailing us, steve@stevedeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, me, we, and Gab. You can follow me at Steve Deace Show on X, Instagram, and TikTok. Please don't forget to subscribe to our new YouTube channel at Deace Show on YouTube, DEACE, at Deace Show on YouTube. And if you listen to the podcast version, please make sure you subscribe, or if you're on Apple iTunes, hit follow. Pardon me.
Bless you.
Excuse me. Sorry about that. And that way, if you hit that follow or subscribe button, you'll know that every time we do a new episode, it shows up in your feed every single time. And then you can also leave us a 5-star review. Tens of thousands of you have done that. We love every single one of you for it. Thank you. We'd love tens of thousands more if you guys wouldn't mind. So thank you for those in advance too. And thanks to our friends over at Beam Dream Powder. I unlocked the mystery during the course of the year 2025. What will it take for me not to have to get up and pee every night trying to sleep? Drinking Beam's little hot cocoa dream powder did the trick. Proudly founded in America, run by people who share our values like hard work, integrity, and delivering results. It's a healthy nighttime blend packed with science-backed ingredients shown to improve sleep so that you can wake up refreshed and ready to go take on the day. It's a game changer. You'll start sleeping through the night, wake up energized, and with a full bladder if you're me. Here's the deal. Beam is giving you guys the ultimate Patriot discount right now of up to 40% off. If you try their best-selling dream powder, it comes in lots of good flavors. You'll get up to 40% off if you try it for a limited time. If you go to shopbeam.com/Steve. That's Beam as in laser beam. You know, like Atlas III, the mothership, hiding in the sun, on the dark side of the sun that will be invading us soon. According to a Harvard scientist who says there's 40% odds we're all about to be subjugated here around the 29th by a superior alien race. And I'm not even exaggerating. That is content that is absolutely taking place within network media as we speak. That content is happening.
Yeah, to people who are easily gaslit.
I mean, I didn't say it was real. I just said it's really happening. The content is. All right. So here's the deal. Go to shopbeam.com/Steve. Use the code Steve at checkout. That's shopbeam.com/Steve. You'll get up to 40% off so that you sleep better, wake up stronger, show up ready for your family, your work, and your country, because when you're well rested, you're unstoppable and you won't fall for the Atlas 3 scam. Shopbeam.com/Steve.
I love our advertisers. They must have the patience of Job sometimes if they're watching. Like, he's talking about aliens? Is this in the script?
They all tell me when we meet before they get on the show to make sure it's a good fit. They all tell me, hey, incorporate your daily show into the ad. Incorporate what's going on in the world into the ad. Make it a part of the show. I'm like, you sure?
Yeah, it's a fun theory.
Okay, you got it. Yes. Good luck. And now it is your turn to ask me anything. Questions coming from our followers on X at Steve Deace Show. Thank you guys very much for each and every one of those. Todd has gone through each and every one of your questions, selected the ones that we're going to try to answer on air. I'll get through as many of these as I can on the show, and then I'll get through what remains in the overtime today for Blaze TV subscribers at blazetv.com/Deace. Use the code Deace for $20 off your annual subscription. blazetv.com/Deace, code Deace. Aaron, you have the questions, brother. You may fire when ready. First question. In times of war, soldiers use a question and answer, like who goes there, to quickly identify allies and allow them into the base. What question would you use to quickly identify a fighter on our side? This is inspired. This is a great question.
It's a shibboleth question.
It is. It's a very good question. How about this? What's an American? Thoughts?
It probably demands something like a bit sharper. It's a great question, but you don't have time for dialogue. Isn't it have to be something like "What's a woman"? I mean, you're trying to get inside a time of war, but
yeah. So you think biological human female is quicker to
I mean, I think there's other questions that
what's an American?
Do it. I just think, what were you expecting? Like, I guess, what would you think would be the answer to what's an American that would suffice to get in?
A unique civilization. You're right. Once we go down this road, you're
just gonna see.
Right. Well, the reason I paused is because not that I don't have an answer instantly available, but I was trying to edit myself to see if I could make it as pithy as, well, a biological human female. Yeah. Right? So what's a woman, I think, is good. That would work. How about if you're in like a party setting? Or you
have a little more time.
You have a little more time.
Yeah.
Things are a little bit more casual, more time is available. Then I think you can go to the, what's an American? Who wants to answer?
Yes, yeah. I agree.
Yeah. Okay. But that's inspired, man. That was a very good question. That was very good. I like that one a lot. All right, let's go to number 2 here. All right, number 2. This is from Cows with Guns. And who doesn't want to see more of that? Cows with Guns wants to know, what means can a community use to deny building of a mosque or Hindu temple that will hold up to a First Amendment challenge? As things are currently constructed, you probably cannot do that. And so you're going to have to figure out how to frame the argument differently than that. For example, how many of those people are in the country legally? How many of them have a visa that has not expired? You have to look for workarounds. Now, when the First Amendment was originally framed, it did not mean anyone with any religious system could come here, settle, and have freedom of religion. It did not mean that. Remember, each of these colonies are specific vestiges of the Christian religion. So it really meant that it would be ecumenical among Christians. That's really what it meant. Now, as we've become more of a pluralistic society, that definition has been expanded. And now it has been expanded into an amorphous blob, where essentially the status say every religion other than Christianity has a right to practice what it believes and express its faith. Because Christianity stands athwart what we're trying to do to the culture, you don't. And so we started as a country where freedom of religion meant a freedom to practice the tradition of Christian orthodoxy that your conscience is convinced is the best way, the best and proper way to worship the one true God. And now we have devolved to the point that it is the Christians who now have to defend their ability to have religious freedom and liberty. So since that's the environment that we are in, you're going to have to look for other workarounds to get around that question. And this is where the immigration issue comes into play. For example, is the leader of the mosque an unindicted 9/11 co-conspirator? So there's two different ways to attack a problem. You can do so via the supply, or you can do so via the demand, right? So in this case, the current market demand on religious freedom, it is the Christians who have the benefit or have the burden of proof in determining whether they have it and everyone else does not. So since that's the market demand atmosphere we are in on a legal and political basis, then you're going to have to do what? Attack the supply. We're stopping Islamic immigration, period. If you're from an Islamic-dominated country, you cannot immigrate here. We're not giving driver's licenses. I mean, Sean Duffy, the transportation secretary, threatened to shut California out of the driver's license program because Newsom's given over 60,000 licenses to illegal aliens. Stop threatening it. Just do it. Enough with the threats and blogs. We're trying to save a civilization here, and not all of us have a government pension program there, Sean. So just do the thing. So the demand side is going to be difficult, which means we need to attack the supply side. We're to cut down on the supply of available people who would even want to inhabit said buildings. How many of them here are here on an H-1B visa, for example? Well, that's been revoked. How many are here on a green card that's expired? Well, you shouldn't be here. How many are here illegally? You shouldn't be here. If you're government benefits are for law, are for people naturally born or natural born citizens moving forward. We're too much in debt. We can't even afford it for natural born citizens. But since they're the ones that have been paying the freight for this welfare state all this time, we're going to narrow it down to natural born citizens. Only natural born citizens can have social welfare, access to social welfare programs. You're going to have to attack the supply. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you've said it already once today, but it obviously bears repeating. This is a nation of laws versus nation of political will. The way you ask the question is, what do we do procedurally? Well, it's always forfeiting our political will right out of the gate. There was a question last week about this. If rural America really is conservative, if it really is red, and there was that town that was brought up, a town of like 6,000, and I can't keep a mosque out of here. I'll tell you what, it's game over if our so-called red conservative rural American towns of 6,000, if they can't get the whole town to show up and say no. You'd be surprised at how quickly the courts are always watching. And the courts all the way back when Steve was warning you about Varnum versus Bream and why they were test casing Iowa, because they planned on doing this all along. They wanted to know the resolve of rural America. If rural America had a lot of resolve, not only would rural America look different right now, all of America would look different. But we started caving on Varnum versus people showing up. If that town of 6,000 is just fortified with citizens, it's like, you're not doing that. And that's America writ large. It's an entirely different place. That's why Steve's not using that as just some kind of placeholder. Every time he uses that, listen and listen hard, because he's absolutely right about that. This question, the way it's asked, it's already forfeiting the political will. Don't do that. Take back what's yours. Either you're a citizen or not.
I think we have to understand there are no easy ways of undoing what has been done. There aren't any ways. There aren't any easy ways of undoing it. Every way will be hard, and therefore accrues risk and side effects. Okay? You're morbidly obese. I know it may seem easy just to take Ozempic. I know people that are on it, and it's done great things for them. You could also be risking side effects by doing that. Similarly, though, if you want to get in your high horse with the people taking Ozempic and say, well, I'm doing it naturally. Every time you lift a weight, your form could be a little bit off, and you seriously injure yourself. Every time you go for a run, you could blow out an Achilles or a knee. You see what I'm saying? No matter how you want to do this. And why is that the case? Because, number one, we don't live forever, so our bodies expire, our joints get older. And then number two, if you put yourself in a position, as I have before, of being morbidly obese, you've dug a hole for yourself so deep that you can't get out of it in a relatively short amount of time. It's going to take discipline. Whether you use a pharmaceutical method, whether you use a natural method, whether you use a hybrid of them both, it will take discipline to maintain to get yourself out of the hole you've dug for yourself. And therefore, the longer it takes to dig out of said hole, the more exposed to the side effects of the digging you are prone to. You see where I'm going with this? Mm-hmm. Because of how deep the hole we have generationally dug is. There is no way of doing this that does not risk blowback, side effects, suffering, failure. There isn't one. It wasn't always this way, but it hasn't been 1989 or 1997 for a long time. This is the way it is now. I mean, I was 400 pounds in 1997. I was 24 years old. I could have started working out then, but I didn't. I waited another 10 years. That's 10 more years of all that inflammation, 10 more years of all that damage on my joints. I was throwing my back out, man, all the time. Because I didn't do it early, I waited until I was already at the point that my testosterone level is slowing down. I'm in my mid to late 30s. I've got more than a decade of all that added extra weight, inflammation on my frame, right? I did all this damage to myself and then started to undo it, which meant I was risking damage by undoing the damage I'd already been done. There's no easy way out of this. This is not going to be a trip to a fast food joint. This isn't going to be 90 days same as cash, no money down. There's no easy way to do this. We just need to calibrate that into the synapses of our brains. That if we understand what time it is and what will need to now be done, I am going to accept the risk therein. Because the risk of not doing it is far greater. The risk of blowing a knee out, the risk of throwing my back out. That all sucks, right? Most people don't die of throwing their back out, though, right?
Right.
But people tend to die of like heart attacks and strokes, right?
They do.
They do. And so I wasn't devoid of risk in what needed to be done to lose the weight. In fact, I could seriously injure myself doing it, right? But the risk of not doing so outweighed the risk of doing so. And we have to come to that conclusion. That the risk of letting this just go on unencumbered is way higher than the risk we will have to assume to undo it. There's no way out. Charlie Rist may be the most successful political activist organization so far on the right this century for the gospel. And then just as it was being proven his risk was winning, he made the right call. He then had to risk his own life. There's not a way to do this outside of risk. There's too much at stake, we're too far gone. So we have just decide what risk you want. We can be Hezekiahs here, and I'm the prophet Isaiah. I've come to warn you about these future people called the Babylonians. And like King Hezekiah, you can look at the prophet Isaiah and you can say, hey, all the stuff you're warning about, is it going to happen when I'm alive and when I'm in charge? And Isaiah will say, no, this is what is in store for your children and grandchildren. You can wipe your hands of the matter hundreds of years before Pontius Pilate did, and take that to your grave. And then stick your descendants with that. That's the choice Hezekiah made. And his descendants faced Babylon. When who knows, maybe if Hezekiah repents of his arrogance and his complacency, maybe that never happens. We'll never know. We'll never know. What we do know is that he didn't. And he died in it. And then he sentenced the next generations to die in it too. Way more violently and savagely than his death. We cannot sustain this. This is not sustainable. Being 400 pounds at 26 years old, not sustainable. It is going to suck to not be 400 pounds. It is going to suck to get out of this. And we have to understand that the cost of not doing so will suck way more than the cost it will take to get out of it. But a cost will be paid. We're just determining which cost we prefer to pay. Next question. Let's go to this one. All right, this one is from DJ Miller, Pragmatic Buckeye. I think I'm in trouble already. Given man's tendency to turn things into idols, could the Holy Land itself have become an idol that should be deprioritized? Sure. You could also take your desire to see Israel deprioritized. You could turn that into an idol. And then you can take the idol of your idol of seeing Israel deprioritized. And then you could take somebody who disagrees with you on that. They could turn that disagreement into an idol. And then you turn your disagreement of their disagreement into an idol. See where I'm going here? We can turn absolutely everything into an idol. So how do we know when something is a conviction? And convictions can be zealous. Zealotry is not always wrong by a long shot. It matters whether it's girded by meekness or not, power under control. John the Baptist would be considered a zealot by any of the soft-headed standards we have today. Jesus said, no man born of women was more blessed than he. So is it a meekness? Is it a power under control? I mean, John the Baptist went out into the streets and condemned King Herod right to his face as a whoremonger. He didn't smite King Herod at the neck and take the vigilante justice upon himself, did he? No. So one is what they do in Islamic cultures with their zealotry, and the other is what we do within biblical cultures with our zealotry, when there's power under control. So how do we know whether it's a conviction and whether it's an idol? You look at the fruit of what it is doing to you. Has the particular cause made the gospel more prevalent in your life? Can I be real personal for a second? One of the things I was deeply concerned about at the advent of the Trump era, and probably is the reason, I could care less what Trump said about Heidi Cruz. I actually know Heidi Cruz. She's a lovely woman and not hard to look at. I also know a guy who's just kind of a, P.T. Barnum, how many times do we have private conversations about how during the primary, Todd, where I was just broken about Trump's insulting comments on Heidi Cruz and whether Ted killed JFK's dad? How many times did I call you at midnight and say, Todd, I don't know if I can go on and just tolerate with Ted accusing Raphael of being a Kennedy assassin? Do we ever have those conversations? I could care less about that crap. That's just P.T. Barnum, grist for the mill, chum for the masses. I could care less. What made me originally never Trump more than anything else is I was concerned that people were willing to essentially redefine their entire belief system to conform to him. Which is exactly why as he became president and governed in many respects according to the ways that my belief system said we should govern, I looked at the evidence and thought, well, I did have that concern. I thought I had legitimate reasons early on to have said concerns, but now that we're actually doing the governing, I can either go with the evidence that I am seeing, or I could continue in my narrative in order to justify myself. Which one should I choose? Which one did I choose? The evidence. Because if I had stuck with my narrative, that would have been an example of, what's the word we're debating right here?
Idolatry.
Idolatry. Yeah. What kind of person do you think it would have turned me into if it stuck with my narrative? Well, David French, Bill Kristol, most of your Republican senators, James Lankford. I mean, we know what it would have turned me into. So we can turn anything into an idol, absolutely anything. The question to find out on whether this is conviction or idolatry. Like some people may look from afar, 10,000 feet, and see Charlie's work in the political realm and how much he loved Trump, and claim that he was compromising his Christian faith for Donald Trump, right?
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I have friends of mine who thought that when Charlie was alive. But then you saw Charlie's memorial. And who did everybody talk about there? Everybody that got up and spoke, who did they talk about? Charlie and Jesus. Everybody did. Everybody did. And so the final judge is his legacy. And we actually saw that it wasn't Charlie who was compromising Jesus for Trump. It was Charlie who was bringing Trump world closer to Jesus. Anybody want to dispute that with me now, based on everything we've seen in the wake of his death?
No.
Would anybody dare, that's not a complete whore, sellout, slander of the brethren, would anybody dare make a credible case opposed to what I just said, based on what we've seen in the aftermath of Charlie's martyrdom?
I don't think so.
No. Because the evidence is clear. So, is that conviction drawing you closer to the gospel, making you focus more on the gospel? Or is it taking you away from it? The most chilling part of the Screw Tape letters, I've said this for years, to me anyway. The most chilling part, and I don't quite have it memorized anymore, I used to, is when Uncle Screw Tape says to Wormwood, whether it's pacifism on the left or patriotism on the right, convince your man that his faith is nothing but a means to an end. We don't care what the means is, because once that happens, the end is just the same. And we have a cage full of such men down here. Now, keep in mind that book was written in 1942. He is reading it over the air, over the BBC airwaves, as Londoners are locked down from the Battle of Britain and the Nazis turning their own airspace into a war zone. And he's even in that situation warning them, hey, you may think your cause is right, but if you think it's so right that you can abandon righteousness, you're going to be right where hell wants you to be. And the only difference between you and the people bombing us is you're speaking English and they're speaking German. So does this conviction draw me closer to Christ or further away? If it draws you further away, it's become an idol, even if it's based in something the Word of God affirms. It still can be an idol. I heard Josh McDowell once prove a point that we can even turn the scriptures into an idol. And I was listening to him speak at a youth ministry conference, and a full room of Southern Baptist, I think it was, and he asked them, why is it wrong to lie? And one by one, they got up on the microphone. What do you think their answer was here in this good Protestant room when they were asked, why is it wrong to lie? What do you think they said? Because the Bible says so. And one by one, McDowell called all of them legalists. You're all wrong. It's wrong to lie because God is the truth. Why is it wrong to murder? One by one, they got up and said, because the Bible says you're all wrong. It's because God is the source of life. The 10 Commandments, he pointed out, are essentially a character study of God. It's Jehovah 101. The basic understanding of God's character. I alone am God. Don't make any other gods. Don't take my name in vain. Model the same practices of work that I gave when I created you and your world. Don't murder each other. Don't bear false witness against one another. Don't simmer in levels of covetousness and jealousy and discontentment with one another. On and on and on. And he pointed out that the Bible is the clarification of who Jesus is. But that ultimately Christian faith is based on Jesus, not the Bible. And he's right. Paul doesn't say by your perfect systemic theology, we are saved. If Christ be not raised, then our preaching is in vain. So we can turn, and yes, I'm a guy who puts the fun in fundamentalism, and I'm saying even here on Reformation Week, we can turn the Word of God into an idol. Does your conviction make you more Christ-like and closer to Christ, or less Christ-like and further away? And that's how you know whether it's a conviction or whether it's an idol. Any quick thoughts on that before the break?
That'll preach. That's my quick thought.
All right. We're up against the break. How many more good ones do we have?
Well, we've got through 3.
How many did you have?
So
how many did you take? 15, you told me, right?
We can root through enough of them to find out how many. I'm confident of that.
All right. I'll try to. The questions have been really good, man. And these are not, always 2 or 3 minute answers, although Amy's been hounding me. My answers are too long recently. All right. We'll get to more of your questions, maybe even shorter answers when we come back. In these unprecedented times, make sure that you get a real estate agent that you can trust, and you'll be recommending to the people that trust in you for years to come. Where would you find such an agent? The name says it all. realestateagentsitrust.com is where you can go. That's realestateagentsitrust.com. Find a real estate agent whose track record of success is verified. Otherwise, we wouldn't give them to you. And that's why we recommend them to you, whether you're trying to get across the state, across country, wherever you want to go. Ultimately, what you want to do is get across the finish line of what can be a stressful process, even in unprecedented times.
Bing, bing.
Or not in unprecedented times, I meant. So get started today. And a lot of times that agent is right here in our audience with you at realestateagentsitrust.com. Again, head over to the website where the name says it all. realestateagentsitrust.com. All right, let's try to get some shorter answers. That's for me. As we continue on with this week's Ask Me Anything. All right, this one is coming from King of Kyle. Do you think the right will have enough unity to make it through the midterms? I think there are two challenges that we have to see play out. One, the Israel narrative. And it's one thing to have a debate. I'm actually all for the debate. I've been having a debate about Israel, its prophetic significance. I've been doing that on this show for literally 20 years. But, are we going to have prominent influencers now say that Qatar's more of a friend to us than Israel? That's the kind of stuff that will absolutely, existentially drive a wedge right down the middle of our camp, for sure. And then number 2, is this shutdown successful or not? So the first is what's going on within our own grassroots. We're undergoing a generational change. Boomers are dying off, being replaced by a generation of people in the church that don't necessarily hold to some of the same dispensational views as a default mechanism, or at least open to challenging them. So that's what's happening within the grassroots. The second on the shutdown is more at the governing level. If the government shutdown is successful as a strategy for Republicans, then it'll make unity much easier. If it's not, you're going to see a lot of these Langford, John Thune-esque Republicans, which most of them are, cut and run and start knifing us in the back. So I think those are the two things that will determine our unity at this time next year. Your thoughts on that real quick?
Yeah, outside of the unknown and the unpredictable.
Thank you for that caveat, yeah.
Yeah. But the status quo is the status quo on these things until it isn't anymore. And Steve aptly pointed out the Scott Gunn quote from Hunt for Red October. Playing chicken, knowing when to flinch. It's a game that has to be played to find out.
Next question. We go next to, is it Amy, I believe? And she writes, my mother wasn't religious, but occasionally visited church to light candles and had prayer cards. When she was dying, she denied last rites. My Christian journey is in its infancy. I can't move forward and choose a denomination until I figure out which allows me to see her again. That's a great question, but frankly, it's from a bad premise. And that ultimately, you need to be the most concerned with whether you get to see Christ ever. And from your own admission, your mom denied Christ and even denied it up until her very death. So you're seeking instead to put your qualifications on God, when in reality, God owes you nothing. Nothing. He doesn't owe your mother anything. Doesn't owe any of us anything. By your own admission, your dear sweet mom denied him up until the very end of her life. Hey, I faced this with my beloved Nana. I'm a new convert. My grandmother's dying, whom I greatly love, and she was enamored and imbued with the occult and all that stuff all my life. And I remember trying to get Pastor Bob to her deathbed. He eventually did get in to see her. I was not allowed in the room. He told me that she accepted God's grace on her deathbed. I don't know that was true. He might have just told me that, frankly, as a new believer trying to comfort me. I don't know. What I do know is that none of us are deserving of God's grace, and yet he offered it to us at the highest possible cost, his own son. And Jesus tells a parable of a man in hell named Lazarus, how he wishes he could go back and warn his family members not to end up where he is. I can promise you, sister, regardless of where your mom's eternal fate rests, she would not want you to pin your eternity on her. Because either she is in heaven and is imbued now with truth every waking day, or she's in eternal separation from God and mired with regret. And if she could bridge the divide like Lazarus in the parable and warn you against following in her footsteps, she would. In either case, regardless of where she is, she waited until she risked her eternal fate up until the last breath in her body. And so I am confident, regardless of which side of eternity she is on, she would warn you today to not follow that example, to not put your eternal fate on her, but to put it on God and trust in him. God bless you. Next question. All right, we've got, is it Paul K. Banks III? Now, that's the name of a guy that's either suing you or you want to hire to sue someone else for you. Paul says in Timothy chapter 2, Paul indicates that God's desire is that all be saved and come to a knowledge of the truth. How can God possibly desire that all be saved if he already decided before the creation of the world who would be and who would not? Thoughts? Well, I mean, there's lots of things we desire. Are you able to get the outcome you want constantly based on desires? I mean, if you had the foreknowledge that God has, I would imagine you also, looking down, knowing how human history was going to turn out, that we wouldn't even make it through the 3rd chapter in the book before we tap out. That's not the outcome that God desired. You see, you're looking at desire also only one way. You think God desired to torture his son? I think he desired that. Just couldn't wait, in fact, to do it. I think God desired apostles being drawn and quartered, crucified upside down. He's got a torture fetish. Just couldn't wait to watch it. Couldn't wait to see it. You have children. You and I are made in his image. That means we're the reflection of God. We are the imago Dei. We carry some of him within us as our creator. Your children disobeyed you. You desire that? Did you desire them to disobey you? You're like, man, I've just been sitting here waiting for you guys to talk back to your mom. I couldn't wait till you did it. Thank you. Of course not. So I always find these questions interesting because they always begin with the premise of what God must do, as opposed to what we owe. They almost always begin with the premise of God did not do enough, as opposed to the premise of what we've already done. There is a great anxiousness in our species to put the blame and responsibility for our own mistakes and shortcomings on the one who makes no mistakes and has never had any shortcomings, rather than accept the responsibility for our own, which is why we need a savior. I go back to a nefarious plot where Nefarious says one of the key strategic adjustments that hell made is when it realized that our desire to be worshipped rivaled even hell's own. And hell didn't want to do that. Hell didn't want to play into our vanity because hell wants us to worship it instead of heaven. But then realized, hey, don't mess with success. Don't argue with a winner. We'll use your vanity against you just the same. You have any thoughts on how I answered that?
Well, I think it has a lot to do with the previous question. So much of our worship comes with conditions right from the get-go, and that's understandable at the outset. We're so broken. We come to God because finally we realize we're broken on some level, but then it's all about fixing that brokenness primarily instead of hitching it to worshiping God, trusting in his plan, and then letting the healing of the brokenness come in its own time. I think you have got to get that order correctly then come to this question the most honestly, which I do think there is an honest approach to this question, and that is in terms of double predestination. If you believe people from all time are fated to hell, what does that mean about certain passages within Scripture? I think that's an honest question. As long as it comes within the framework of all the advice Steve gave you on the previous question.
I agree with
Make sure you are worshiping and not having all kinds of conditional asterisks on what you claim your faith is.
I think I've demonstrated I don't have a problem expressing something if I have a very strong opinion about it, right? The more I read the Bible, the less of a strong opinion I have, frankly, on the Calvinist versus Arminian debate. I think there's ample biblical evidence for both. I think clearly the Bible overall puts a huge emphasis and reliance on the sovereignty of God. But I also think that we cannot put our own personifications on God's sovereignty. We're not transcendent beings. We couldn't begin to understand what it means to be both immanent and transcendent at the same time. We can't. Not to mention, it's usually Christians who are debating Arminianism and Calvinism, How much free will do we and do we not have? When in reality, the goal of the Christian is to give your will up for Christ. Jesus, teach us how to pray. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. The Lord himself in the Garden of Gethsemane does not pray for his own will. Says, my Lord, not my will, Lord, but Father, but yours be done. So I find it always fascinating how much Christians debate the extent of their own free will when within the Christian should be the desire and the greatest desire and instinct to forsake our fallen will so that it is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me, the hope of glory. All right, next question. This one is from 60-second man. Steve Friend and almost all the FBI whistleblowers have not been made whole even a month after the 30-day timeline set by Kash Patel and Dan Bongino. What's the holdup? I don't know, but I have already communicated to Steve, hey, last time you needed me to shake the Grassley tree, we got a response pretty quick, as a matter of fact. So
yeah,
you need me to shake that tree again, then I'm more than happy to do so. So I know it's a bit of a dance, you know. You have to use your leverage, but if you use it too early, then you offend, you know. So here's what Steve Friend knows. I will go to the friggin' mattresses for him. He knows that. All he's got to do is issue the order. That's it. But I'm going to wait because I want what's best for him because he's a true American hero, right? But I'm going to wait until I get the order so that I'm doing what's best for him. What's best for Steve is for me to be patient and let the process play itself out. I did that for a while earlier this year. And then Steve made it clear that wasn't best anymore. So I stopped doing that. And then we got some response. But the minute Steve needs me to either rest or attack, I will follow his edict for sure. Thank you for raising the matter. It does need to be brought up routinely until fully satisfied. Anna Allen asks, how am I doing? We're picking up the pace a little bit now, right?
We are.
Okay. How do you know when something is God calling you to do it versus just a compulsion, obsession, and I wanna? I would go back to the same thing I said about idolatry and conviction earlier. If it draws you closer to Christ and makes you more Christ-like, that's probably God calling you to do it. And if it doesn't, or if it makes you think you have to do things that are un-Christ-like to make it happen, it's probably not. And the thing too is that can even be, it's a righteous thing to want to be a husband and a wife, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. And so if you think you have to do unrighteous things to make that happen, that's probably not what God is calling you to. So this is why we have to check our heart conditions all of the time. I got a note from a man over the weekend who's just kind of given up, and he's like, you know, I feel like I failed. I couldn't, I'm in my 40s now. I wanted to find a wife, have children. I could not make it happen. I tried. And he goes, am I a failure? I said, you don't know. Your life story is not over yet. There might be a widow out there 10 minutes from now or 10 years from now whose husband dies suddenly, and now she's left with a full family that she is tasked with raising on her own. And God has it in store that you're going to be her husband and inherit that family, and you're going to get that family, more family than you ever thought you were going to ever have. It's already going to be there ready-made for you. We don't know. Or there might be a great missionary calling that God has on your life 10 minutes from now or 10 years from now. And then you realize this is why, despite my best efforts to get married, it didn't happen because children and family, this is a dangerous situation and might have encumbered this. And this is the call that God has on my life. We just don't know. We're not God. And so when we start doing this cosmic math on our own, we're neither immanent nor transcendent. We're finite. We're finite. And so we start doing cosmic math when it's the math is beyond us. We couldn't do it if we tried. And that's when we often make some of the worst decisions we make in our life. And I'm speaking from my own experience. All right, we get to a few of these in the overtime, what's left. Some great questions this week. Very thought-provoking. Really appreciated those. Well done, guys. For the rest of you, we'll see you tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck, right here on Blaze TV. Until then, go hard. Romans 8:28.